Welcome back, everybody. We are here today with our fourth session in the Threat Intelligence Foundation series. My name is Paul Jaramillo, Director of Threat Hunting and Intelligence at Sophos MDR.
And I'm Jordan Olness. I'm a Threat Intelligence Analyst for the Sophos MDR practice.
And today we are going to be covering a great topic on tracking adversary infrastructure and kind of fill you in about what all goes into that. So we'll kind of be establishing, what makes up attacker infrastructure, what are the different things, the advantages of tracking infrastructure as opposed to reactively analyzing malware, which we did in the previous session. And then how do you kind of sort out from all the different indicators, which ones are the unique ones worth tracking, as well as dive into some other problems about getting around geofencing and automation. So with that, I'm going to dive in with Jordan. So Jordan, can you kind of describe to us what makes up attacker infrastructure?
So, attacker infrastructure, generally speaking, this is computing resources that are controlled by a threat actor that they use to facilitate an attack. What do I mean by that? Generally speaking, I mean, these are the servers that they're using in order to complete an attack. So if we're talking about like malware infrastructure, we could be talking about command and control servers. We could be talking about staging servers. We could be talking about proxy servers. Alternatively, we could be talking about like web services. So this kind of infrastructure would be like phishing pages, or this could be like traffic direction services. It's kind of a broad term to really describe all the different kind of, well, more or less servers that attackers use in their attacks.
Yeah, there's just so much that makes up all the different pieces of infrastructure. As you can see from the list here, this is not even everything, but some of the key ones that we've highlighted before, because the adversary will do recon from usually other people's infrastructure or through Tor proxies to disguise where they're coming from. They'll deliver exploits either from a download or from like a drive-by or watering hole. They often leverage traffic distribution systems to shuffle their C2 traffic around, and we'll have different strategies for storing their exfiltrated data. And then one of the favorite ones is obviously tracking their admin panel, because those tend to be very unique. And then one thing I'll just highlight real quickly is compromised infrastructure. That's very challenging, especially if the organization that's compromised hosting the attacker infrastructure is one that you need to keep open. So a lot of cloud and SaaS services, if they tend to host compromised infrastructure, it's difficult to block those because your business may rely on those. So something to keep in mind. Okay, that's great, Jordan. So can you kind of tell us what are the advantages of tracking from the infrastructure side as opposed to the malware sample?
Sure. There's several ways that it's useful. This gives us insight into how an attacker's operations work from the day-to-day operations side of things. For us in threat intelligence, this is really important information. But in addition to that, we also want to, it allows us to be proactive with our defenses. What do I mean by that? Take this hypothetical example. Say we've got a piece of malware and we've identified what the command and control server is. What do we do next? We can block that server. Absolutely, that's something we can do. We can take a reactive approach going forward. What do I mean by that? Wait for the next sample to come along, identify that command and control server, and then block that one. We can absolutely take that approach. But if we want to be a bit more proactive, it might make sense to sit down and understand, kind of examine that command and control server and understand what makes it different than, well, every other server on the internet. Once we've kind of got a good understanding of what this command and control server looks like that's unique, we can take this information and apply it to the rest of the internet and look for all of the command and control servers for this piece of malware. This allows us to be more proactive with our defenses and allows us to block before it shows up in the next sample.
Yeah, I agree. It's just very powerful when you can have visibility into new infrastructure getting stood up and then exactly know when it goes live and starts delivering exploits or whatever its feature functionality is tremendous advantage as you put it, as opposed to waiting for a sample to show up, however you end up getting that sample. So we get how it's an advantage. Now, what are some of the unique indicators of all the different things that are out there? Which are the more unique ones that maybe are great to track versus opposed to some other ones?
Sure. Really, it's kind of different in every situation. Let's look at some examples here. So let's start off with async rat. So this is a very popular piece of malware that's available to cyber criminal actors in particular. Okay, we can take a look at a command and control server for async rat, sit down, understand it, kind of pick it apart, analyze it. And what we might realize is that by default, it uses TLS for communications, and it's got a default common name that is async rat server. That kind of stands out like a sore thumb on the internet. So if we wanted to go looking for async rat command and control servers, really what we want to look for on the internet is any server that has a TLS certificate that has a common name set to async rat server. So really, once you understand it, it's pretty straightforward, but you need to do that analysis work first to make that determination. Let's take another example. Let's look from kind of the web host side of things. Let's look if we want to find some Office 365, Microsoft 365 phishing pages. How would we go about trying to identify that infrastructure? Well, phishing actors are trying to impersonate legitimate services like Microsoft, and one of the common things they do is they'll go to a Microsoft legitimate login page and save the images from that web page and use them on their phishing page. So, that's makes it look more legitimate from their point of view, that their phishing page looks legitimate. In our case, if we want to track that infrastructure, what we might want to do is look for all the places on the internet where we see that legitimate image from Microsoft, but not on a Microsoft web page. So this is one of the strategies we can use to find malicious phishing pages that are, in our case, impersonating Microsoft.
Yeah, these are really strong examples, Jordan, that jump out. There's a lot of other potential things that you can use to profile adversary infrastructure, such as the hosting provider, their DNS provider, which ASN or country they're operating out of, who issues their certificate. And I would say that not any single one of these is probably not worthy of tracking, but when you combine them all and they all match maybe 6 or 7 different characteristics of how it's being hosted, that does tend to give you a little bit higher confidence in tracking that infrastructure. So just one thing to point out there. So now, Jordan, we have something worth tracking. How do we kind of expand on this and turn that into infrastructure that we can now kind of monitor for?
Sure. Thankfully, there's plenty of resources that we can use that are going to capture information from the internet and allow us to search through that. One of the most common ones you'll see out there, Shodan or Census. These are platforms that basically scan the internet from one end of the internet, all the IPs to the other end of the internet, and allow you to search through that information. Another one I love is VirusTotal, very jack of all trades kind of tool. We can search for domain information, IP information, URL information, and VirusTotal has something on all those things. Another one I use very commonly, URL Scan. This is a tool for analyzing web pages. So like I mentioned, for finding phishing pages, this is exactly the kind of tool you'd want to use. There's many more different tools and platforms out there, even ones that you can run from your own infrastructure. But yeah, these are some of the ones that I use. Why might you use one and not the other? Well, they all have kind of their own strengths and weaknesses. So take a look at URL Scan to start off. Great platform, but it relies on users to submit URLs to the platform before it'll have information on those web pages. So there's something of a collection gap there. If if somebody hasn't submitted a URL, then it won't exist on that platform. That stands in contrast to something like Shodan or Census, where, like I said, it's proactively and methodically scanning from one end of the internet to the other, but it's maybe, like I said, it's looking at IPs. It's not necessarily looking for web pages. So again, there's something of a gap in the information that it displays. Like I said, virus total, something of a jack of all trades, URLs, domains, IPs, wonderful stuff. But, and again, this is another platform that's mostly dependent on user submission. So we get that same kind of collection gap where if somebody hasn't submitted it, then it won't appear on the platform.
Yeah, that's great. So now that we're tracking them, I know in some cases the adversary can get wise to that, the fact that they're being monitored, and maybe implement something like geofencing. So can you kind of describe what that is and how we might get around that?
Sure. Generally, when we're talking about geofencing, we're talking about the attacker will only allow communications when it's from an IP in a geographical location that they specify. But really, this can extend to several different forms of, filtering for traffic and filtering for who's able to communicate with their infrastructure. Sometimes this can be filtering based on user agent strings. Sometimes this can be filtering based on victim's language pack. So really, it kind of depends on the situation, how we would want to get around that filtering. I've been lucky enough that I've been able to go kind of long stretches without having to deal with a lot of geofencing or filtering. The most common, platform that I struggle with lately is traffic direction services. These tend to be a bit more problematic and have rather extensive ways of filtering for legitimate victims versus analysts like me that are trying to analyze their infrastructure.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The Kaitero TDS seems to do a pretty good job of blocking researchers. Now, is there any aspects of this that can be potentially automated?
I would imagine so. I will say this is not my area of expertise, but I can definitely say that most of the platforms out there, especially the ones that I've mentioned, have extensive APIs that you can use. So this is the kind of thing that you can integrate with something like a Jupyter Notebook, where you can make a query and automatically pull down information from these platforms via their API and perform automated tasks based on that. You do want to be careful with this. There's obviously the potential for false positives, and you don't want to be identifying perfectly legitimate infrastructure as part of a malicious infrastructure. So you do definitely want to monitor the results that you're getting out of your automated queries over time. And only when you're really certain that you're getting a good data set, then you want to kind of push that to prod, I guess, is a way of describing that.
Yeah, very good point. Keep your SOC analyst happy. Don't kill them with false positives. I think everybody can get behind that. Well, that's it, guys. We were able to cover some key aspects of infrastructure tracking today. Hopefully you were able to learn something. If so, please like and subscribe to the channel. And then if there's other content you want to see, please add comments, and we're happy to look into that as well. And then please stay tuned for our next session on the cybercrime ecosystem. So until then, take care and stay secure. Thank you.
Thanks for watching.